Welcome back, Social Foxers, to another Spotlight Friday. So today on our Spotlight Friday, we are going to be talking about how to properly test a workflow before making it live to everyone, before adding people to that workflow, before sharing the URL or the link to the funnel that triggers the workflow, all of those things so that we can avoid you ended up with egg on your face because something in your automation wasn't functioning the way that you thought. So this is essentially the process that we go through first when we are putting out a new workflow, when we're putting out a new funnel, when we're doing any of that. This is the process that we go through. And this is also the process that we go through when you guys have those issues and we're auditing to see where the problem might lie. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over into automations here on the left-hand side and just show you guys the different ways to test a workflow. So I have made a workflow here for us to test. I'm just going to click into that. So there's essentially 3 different ways that you can test a workflow. Before you do any testing at all, though, the first couple steps that you're going to take, you're first going to publish your workflow. Up here in the top right hand corner, you can see you can put this into draft. So when you're building it out and you're working on it, you can leave it in draft. When you begin to test it, you have to publish it. Otherwise, it doesn't exist in your account. Essentially, it's not live until it's published. So we'll keep it published. The second thing you want to do is in the settings area here in the middle. In this settings area, you want to allow multiple contacts to go through the workflow. So this is automatically defaulted to not allow multiples to come through. And this is essentially, if you had the same person, for example, sign up for a lead magnet, they would be able to go through the workflow and get that lead magnet delivered multiple times. Because you're probably going to be putting yourself through this workflow more than once to test it, you want to allow multiple. Otherwise, once you go through the workflow one time, you won't be able to come into it again. And so you're like, okay, it won't let me in my workflow. It won't add me. Something's wrong. And it's really just because you have this allow multiple off. So it doesn't allow the same person to come through more than once. So make sure that that is turned on. And then in addition to that, so if you are over here, you can see I have been putting myself through these steps so that you guys could see this example. I am already in this workflow right here. So I'm hanging out in this wait step. You can click on the little number and the little person, and that's going to show you everybody that's in this wait step. I am already in this workflow. If I try to add myself to the workflow again, it would not let me because a contact can only be in the workflow once at a time. So what that means is if you are testing a workflow and you're trying to go through it multiple times, 1, make sure you have the allow multiple on, and 2, make sure that if you are hanging out somewhere in the workflow in a wait step or whatever, and you're going to test it again and put yourself through the workflow again, just remove yourself from the workflow with this little trash can up here. Okay, so that is what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to remove myself from that step of the workflow. I'm going to save it and then I'll refresh and you can see that my little guy will disappear here. So, right, there's nobody in this workflow. There's no people hanging out. I'm not sitting in there again so that it wouldn't let me add it. So we're good to start testing on this workflow. So there's generally 3 ways that you can test workflow emails. So you can click into the specific email here and you can see down here at the bottom, test emails. So you can send each individual email to yourself to test it. Like say you're testing the links to make sure they work, or you're testing the unsubscribe, or you just want to see how the formatting comes through when you're testing just this specific email. So you would just type in your email address here, and then you would click send test mail. Now, there are 2 other ways that we utilize this send test mail. And those are basically spam testing email services. So we've shared about these in the group before, and I'll link them in this post. But the two different spam testing email websites that we use, I have pulled up here. So we use mail-chester.com, and then we use Mail Genius. And these both work in a similar way, and they work really well with the test email function on the specific email action. So this one down here. So how this works is you essentially go to these websites, mail-chester.com. This is a custom email address that you're going to be sending your message to. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that just using that little copy button. I'm going to go back over to my workflow, and then I'm going to paste that here in the test email section. So then I'm going to send my test mail. And it can take a little bit for that to go through. Okay, so it says email sent to the given email address. I'm going to go back over to spam tester here and then give it a minute, and then I'm just going to click check my score. So it does take a second to render, and it gives you information here. So it scored me 6.6 out of 10. Here is my message. You can see any images or anything, and then it says, okay, Spam Assassin thinks you can approve these things, which are essentially, some of this is in your DNS, and then some of this is your HTML, how heavy like your images, and things like that. It gives you all of these different ways to improve your message. So I'm not fully authenticated. That has to do with our, your DNS settings and things like that. A DMARC verification. So it gives you all of this information about how likely you are to get into the inbox. So essentially, Mail Genius does the same thing. So I'm just going to go and copy there. It's copied to my clipboard. I'm going to go back over here and paste that new email address there, and I'm just going to send the test email. So if you have an email, obviously, that you have a lot of copy in. Now for this specific email, because it's just an example, there's a lot of things, a lot of like copy that is linked, and then there's not very much else in the email. So that, is going to look a little bit weird when these email testers are going through, and that's probably likely why we have scored a little bit low on this particular email. So my test email has been sent for this second service. I'm going to go over here, and then I'm just going to indicate that I am not a robot and check to see my score. So pretty much the same. They do it out of 100 for Mail Genius. And so we're 62 out of 100. Over here we were, basically 66 out of 100 with that score. So same thing. These are giving you good information. It's giving you best practices. It says my message body doesn't follow the best practice. So this is a good resource for you guys to be testing your emails. Those are the two services that we use. So from here, what I'm going to do is, this is the first way to test the email from the actual email itself, putting your email address down there. So I'm going to go ahead and save that action. We'll save the workflow. The second way to test your email, actually before I move on to that, I did have this other service pulled up that we use as a way to make sure that your copy in your email is as simple and straightforward as you can be. So this is HemingwayApp.com, and we've talked about this in the group as well previously. Essentially, you would paste your email copy in here, and it's going to show you the readability. So a grade 6 reading level. It's going to show you how many words. It's going to give you suggestions on how to make your copy more clear and concise over here. So if you feel like you want an extra little buddy to edit and kind of give you suggestions on the copy that you write for your emails, Hemingway app is a really great service to do that. And that doesn't have to be just emails. That can be anything. That can be social media posts. It can be copy for a funnel that you're putting together, anything. You can paste it in here, and it's free. And then see what suggestions it has to make it more readable, less complicated, more concise, straight, and to the point. All right, so going back to our workflows here, the second way to test a workflow is by adding yourself to the workflow through this test workflow option up here. So you just click here and then you can see you can basically select a contact from this list. So I will select myself to be the contact that's added. You'll just click yourself as the contact and then you'll hit run test. When you add yourself to the workflow in this way, it bypasses any kind of workflow trigger. So it essentially pops you into the workflow down here at the first action of the workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and hit run test. And then I will refresh the screen. And you can see here I am. It's added me to the workflow. I'm hanging out in that first wait step. Okay, so from there, the third way that you can test a workflow and the best way, in our opinion, to test the workflow, you really shouldn't be sending out any automation until you have tested the workflow from this workflow trigger. So for this particular workflow, it's a form being submitted. So before I go to my funnel and make it live, I'm just going to double check my workflow trigger here. So this is supposed to be triggered by a form. I've added that form is submitted, and then I've taken that next step to tell the system exactly which form needs to be filled out in order to trigger this workflow, which for this example, it's workflow testing Spotlight Friday form. So I'm going to go ahead and save that trigger. Now I know that my workflow is going to be triggered by that form when I fill it out on my funnel. Now, since I'm going to test this live, I need to remove myself from this from the workflow that I'm in, because if I'm already in it, like we learned earlier, I can't be added back in. You can't be in it twice. So I'm going to go ahead and delete my contact out of here again so that I can continue the testing process. So we'll go ahead and save that, and we're going to refresh. I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this first wait step. I really just had that in there as a placeholder for me so that I could see I was easily being added into these workflows correctly. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this action. That way, when I add myself to the workflow by submitting this form, it'll go straight to the email, and I'll get that first. All right, so I'm going to back out of the workflow, and I'm going to go into Sites. Okay, so from the Sites area, I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the funnel that is connected to my workflow. So as we're staying on theme here, that is Workflow Testing Spotlight Friday Example Funnel. Go ahead and click into that. You can see I have already made this funnel live. So I've already gone into the settings up here, and I have added my domain into this funnel and clicked save, so that in the steps area over here, I have the live URL. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and test that URL. So I'm just going to grab this link, and we're just going to pop that into another browser window here. Okay, so website's live. It comes up with that URL. So the next step is to fill out the form and see what happens. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click this button here. Okay, so it looks like the form was submitted, but maybe for this specific funnel, you are wanting it to go to a thank you page, right? Because they've submitted your lead magnet, and how the form is set up now and how this funnel is set up, it's like the person's going to be confused, right? Okay, I filled out the form. Like, it doesn't show my information anymore, but the page hasn't changed. I don't know if I've signed up for it. I don't know what's happened. So if you're testing your funnel, then the next step is to say, okay, I need to figure out what is happening when this form gets submitted. What's happening in my funnel? It didn't go where I wanted it to, which was to my thank you page. So let me go investigate that. So we'll go back over here to the funnel step. We'll go into the funnel, click into the editor, and see what we can find out. So I'm going to go down, I'm going to click on my form here so that it brings up the form settings over on this side. Okay, I can see that I've got my Workflow Testing Spotlight Friday form. as the form here, which is good, and then the button actions here. So the redirect action for the form, which is essentially what happens after the form button gets clicked, is set to use action from form builder. So since my expectation for this form is that it's going to go to the next step of the funnel, which is the thank you page, I need to edit this form redirect action. So in this drop down here, you can see that what we want it to do is go to the next step of the funnel. So if you're submitting your form and it's not acting the way that you would like, the first step is to go and see, okay, what are the settings for this form? So for this instance, I want it to go to the next step of the funnel. So that's what I'm going to select. And then I'm going to hit save. Now, if we go back to our workflow, we will probably find that I've been added into that workflow via the form. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to retest this form first before I move on to the testing of the workflow function. Since this is kind of what we're troubleshooting now, this didn't exactly do what we wanted it to do, so let's go back and test that. I've done my changes, I've saved those. I'm going to navigate back over here to the funnel page, and then I'm going to hit refresh so that those changes take effect. And I'm going to fill this in again and see if it's different. Okay, so now let's click the button and see what happens this time. Okay, perfect. So now I have been redirected to my thank you page, which was what I intended to do. So from here, you want to check if you have any buttons, if you have anything on on this page that is your call to action that you're wanting them to do. You want to make sure that those buttons that you have are functioning, right? So if you have the call to action to join your free Facebook group, then you want to click that and make sure that that is directing to the Facebook group that you want. You can see obviously this is directed to one of Roxy's groups, but you want it to be your specific group. Now, if this is your funnel and it's directing to Roxy's group, obviously that's an issue because you're not Roxy. So I'll show you guys where to adjust that when you're testing out those links and buttons on your funnel. So we'll go ahead and close this. We'll go back over to our funnel editor. And then from here, I'm just going to be up in the top right-hand corner, these little pages. I'm going to click into the second step of the workflow, which is this workflow testing thank you. And now I can see, okay, let me click on my button and we'll see what's going on with that. So the button settings come up here. When you scroll down to the bottom, you can see, okay, this website URL, which is the button action, this is not the correct group. So this is where you would want to update that right here. So that's how you would troubleshoot that aspect. So we have filled out the form. The form is now going to the correct place that we wanted it to go to after you fill it out, sends you to the thank you page. We've adjusted this link so that the link on the thank you page is correct. So we have officially tested this on the desktop version. Now, as you guys know, we do have mobile and desktop optimization. So if you are planning on sharing this widely everywhere, you need to test it on mobile and you need to test it on desktop separately, because you want to make sure that all of those functions on both different versions of your site, if you have made changes for formatting and things like that for mobile, you want to make sure that those are effective and that they're set up correctly and that everything goes how you expect it to on the mobile site as well. So obviously I'm not going to go through the mobile testing in this video. It's the exact same process. You just do it on your phone as opposed to on the desktop version of the website. So I'll let you guys do that for your funnels going forward, testing them on desktop and testing them on mobile. So from here, we've tested all the elements of the funnel. The funnel seems to be working properly. So now we need to go to the workflow and see if the workflow and the email are tested properly. So we're doing automation here on this side. And we're going to go into the workflow in question, which is our workflow testing Spotlight Friday. Okay, so you can see I have been added into this workflow. I am in this wait step, which is where I should be. I should have this email in my inbox. So that's where I'm going to go check. So I have the inbox pulled up here. Okay, so you can see it looks like I got the email exactly how I should have. So I'm going to click into that email. Now, if you didn't get the email, then make sure your workflow is not in draft, all of those things. If you got the email, but it's in your spam, then you want to look at your email copy. Are you using spam words? Are you using a lot of images? Are you using a lot of links in your email, a lot of different links in your email? The spam testers that we ran the email copy through and that we sent the email to, those will help kind of weed out those deliverability problems more on the front end, because they'll warn you if you have if your image to text ratio is not ideal. They'll tell you, hey, you have a lot of HTML, there's a lot of images, it's not the right balance of image to text. So that helps on the front end. You can see we're sending with not a custom subdomain. So it does warn me a little bit that the email address that I say that I'm sending from and the email address that I'm actually sending from are different. So that's the benefit of Mailgun and having your own custom sending domain, that those two email addresses match. But from here, what we want to do next is click every link in your email to make sure that your links work, right? So we want to make sure that every single link that you have in here, there are 3 separate links in here. 2 of them are the same. So these are trigger links. All of these are trigger links. 2 of them are the same. 1 of them is different. So really we have a total of 3 links in this email, including the unsubscribe trigger link that's down here. So let's go and test this. This is my first link in my email. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Okay, so we have a problem, right? The site can't be reached. Check to see if there is a typo in the link generator, right? So this is telling me, check to see if there's a typo in the actual link address that you're sending someone to. So I'm like, okay, that link doesn't work. Let me go. So these are set up as trigger links, right? So I can click into this email, I can click into the link in question, and then I can go to the little link guy and I can see, okay, the lavender essential oil link is the one that should work. Now this is a trigger link, so I can easily then go and check that trigger link to see what the issue is, to see if the URL is correct. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go back out of the workflow, and then I'm going to go into marketing here on this left-hand menu. And then you can see up here, I have my trigger links. So I'm going to go into links. Okay, lavender was the essential oil that we were linking right there. All right, looks like I forgot to put my link in here, right? So we need to change that. We need to make sure that the link URL is actually the link URL that we need. So I'm going to go grab that link and then I'll plug it in there. Okay, so I've got my link on my clipboard. I have copied it. I'm going to go over to the little pencil over here on the right hand side. I'm going to click there and we're going to paste the correct link right there. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. All right, so now we are going to go and see if changing that resolves the problem. So the magic of these trigger links is that they stay the same in your emails. So you can adjust the trigger links here, and even without resending the email, they will populate as the correct link. So if you send out an email and it's live to people, you didn't test it, and they're like, hey, I clicked this link, it doesn't work, you can come into your links here and you can edit it. So all I did was edit this link. I went up to workflow test. This is the same email that I clicked on before. And I'm going to click the URL, the trigger link that wasn't functioning. I'm going to click that. And voila, it now takes me to the website that I put into the trigger link when I adjusted it. Okay, so you would continue to go down the line and do that with every link in your email to make sure. You would also want to do that at least one time. If your unsubscribe link is not changing, your unsubscribe trigger link is not changing, and your process for unsubscribing isn't changing, then you don't necessarily have to unsubscribe yourself from every single workflow series that you're testing. So that when you want to test it in the beginning when you get all of that set up. But then it's not one that you have to test every single time. More so the other links that you're sharing in your email, you want to make sure that each time you are putting out a new workflow with new links and all of that, that you go through these exact steps and test all of your links. So from here, we know that the email delivers. We had some issues with the links. We've now fixed that. So what I would do as the next step in this automation, in this audit process, is to push myself to the next email on this. So I'm going to go back to the automation. We're going to pull that automation back up. And then I'm going to go ahead and push myself to this next wait step. So you would just do that by clicking your little guy there. And then next to the delete button is the move all contacts to the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and click that button. Actually, let me add another wait step here first so that we can keep me in here and it won't kick me completely out of the workflow. So we'll wait for 30 minutes. Okay, save that change. Now I'm going to go back into my contact card in this workflow. I'm going to move the contact to the next step. Yes, I'm moving all of them. And then I'm going to refresh so that I can make sure that it went to the next step. Okay. Yep, so now I'm down here. I should have this email in my inbox. So I'm going to go back over to my email and we'll go back out. Okay, so here we go. This is the second email. I didn't change the, the title or anything on this one, so it looks a little rough, but this is the second email that I got. So this would be the second email in your workflow, in your nurture sequence. So you would want to do the same thing on this, test all of your links to make sure that all of those are working and doing how you expect and the events that you expect to happen from that. Now, say that you put yourself through the workflow and you get all of your nurture emails at once, right? So you fill out your form and you go through your workflow and you get all 5 of your nurture emails at once. In that case, you probably forgot to put in these wait steps that are holding people for a day or 2 days, however long you want in between those wait steps. Obviously, we talked about if your email goes to spam, do you have spam words like free? Do you have a lot of caps? Do you have too many images, not enough text? Do you have a whole bunch of links in your email that also makes it look spammy? And then from there, obviously, the more complicated your workflows get. So if you're using if-else conditional splits on if they opened an email versus if they clicked a trigger link, all of those steps, you will want to troubleshoot all of those steps as well. So when you're putting out this workflow and making it live, if you've spent a lot of time trying to build it out and make sure that it is delivering the information that your customer wants, that it's redelivering the email if it's unread, if it's redelivering the email if they didn't click the trigger link, all of those things, you want to take the time on the front end to test that functionality. So you're going to have to put yourself through multiple times. One time you put yourself through and you don't open the email and you see if it resends the email. Another time you go through and you click the trigger link and see if it does the action that you're expecting it to do when somebody clicks on that trigger link. So it does take a little bit of time to do these edits, but the beauty of that is that you can work out all of the kinks on the front end, and then it doesn't get to the point where you have people in this workflow and it's not behaving how you thought and you have to pull them out and you got to put them in. And it just is a lot more simple to do all of this testing on the front end so that you can see where the holes are and you can fix those errors before it is out live to everyone. So that's generally the process that we go through when we are auditing your workflows. So if you've come to recipe calls, you've seen us do this a number of times, and it's essentially a little bit being like a PI. I mean, you're like a detective. You start at the beginning. Okay, is the funnel set up correctly? Is the right form on there? Does the form go to the place that you intended it to? Like, does it go to the next step of the funnel? Does it instead put up just a message saying thank you? And then what happens when they submit the form, right? Because the funnel is the front-facing customer aspect of your business process, right? The form on the funnel is what they fill out, and that form is the glue and the bridge to all of the things that then happen on the back end and all the automations that take place. So you have to troubleshoot both aspects of that, and you have to test both aspects of that when you are sending out anything that's going to be live to everybody that has any kind of automation attached to it. You just want to make sure that you test on the front end to avoid getting in a situation where people are going through your system, there's things going wrong, it's not behaving how you wanted it to, you then have to pull those people out or pause the workflow and do all this troubleshooting after people are already going through and experiencing, which is, I'm going to tell you, just a lot more stressful. So always beneficial to test on the front end, put yourself all the way through your whole entire process to make sure that it behaves the way that you expect it to. So I know this was a lengthy Spotlight Friday for you guys, but I know that you all are eager to be sending out emails, and honestly, doing this testing on the front end, it doesn't take a super long time to do, is going to save you so much heartache and stress down the line when people are emailing you back saying, hey, this link doesn't work, I can't get to the appointment booking funnel, your class link isn't sending me to the Zoom room, all of those things. So you just really want to make sure that you save yourself some trouble, test on the front end, and your processes will be so much happier and streamlined if you do all of that on the front end. So if you guys have any questions, as always, drop those in the comments below this post and we will help you in any way that we can. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Happy testing, Social Foxers, and I hope you guys have a great weekend.